Hi, welcome to the Crochet Authority podcast, the best and maybe smallest corner of the internet, where three incredibly talented and beautiful women claim to know everything there is to know about fiber arts.
We are Morgan,
Anna,
And Savannah.
three crocheters turned BFFs who consistently have too much to say.
consider this a glimpse into not only our conversations, but our overflowing and powerful minds. From our group chat to your ears, welcome to the pod.
Hi.
Hey, welcome back.
What's up, lads?
Oh my gosh, not much. It's a crisp morning, and by crisp morning I mean foggy and dreary.
Yeah,
same.
Same.
Oh,
It is
awesome.
just gray.
Gray and it's been so foggy since yesterday, but that's okay. Maybe let's make this positive. I feel like we always get down about this weather. It is cozy. It is candle weather. I have my twinkle lights on.
Mm-hmm.
Get a nice blankie. Get your craft.
Mm-hmm.
That type of weather.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
I took a walk on campus at night with the fog, and I was like, I'm literally a movie star. Like, everyone, the world revolves around me, and everything's foggy and beautiful.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to
That's
see a
actually
movie.
so brave.
What do you? I'm in
Maybe,
Bloomington, Indiana. No one's
Yeah,
gonna
I was
kill
like, maybe
me.
I'm just scarred from living in big cities.
Yeah.
I just get nervous about walking anywhere alone at any time of day at all. That just might
my
be a
God.
me being anxious thing, though.
Walking by yourself in the fog at nighttime is the opening sequence of an episode of Criminal Minds.
Ooh. That's not the movie. That's not the show I was imagining. But
You're like romanticizing it, and Morgan's like, girl,
Scared for your
you're
life.
gonna become a true crime. You're gonna be
Well,
on
I
a different type of
survived.
podcast.
I was going to
And we're
see
thankful.
The Conversation by Francis
Sure.
Ford Coppola.
Oh, yes.
And it's about like people like spying on you and
Sophia
like
Coppola.
Oh,
you being watched while you're like walking around. So on the walk home, I was like a little more suspicious. But we
fist
survived.
ready.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you survived so that you can be here recording this phenomenal content today.
Yeah.
Of course.
And that's the only reason.
What better thing? Yeah, the only
Yeah.
one. I appreciate it. After this one, if I die in the fog today,
It's okay.
it's chill.
Me and
it's
Anna will
chill.
continue on.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
woo,
fine.
in my memory. You guys should rename it after me,
No,
Oh,
like a memorial podcast. Oh,
no. I think it'll just still be the Crochet Authority.
okay. That's cool. That's fine.
Anyways,
yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay,
moving
anyways,
on.
what are you guys working on?
The same things I've been working on for the past like 2 months, which is so realistic, but so boring.
annoying. Yeah.
It's just I don't have enough time or energy at certain points to like make a ton of progress. I try to do a little bit every day, just also so I can have like my own hobby time,
Yeah.
you know, because I enjoy doing it, etc., etc. But I haven't had enough time to like really put a dent in anything.
Yeah. Fair.
Same.
Morgan, the scarves. Oh, that's not a scarf, but it's beautiful.
I have
Ooh,
part of the second sleeve. I finished the first sleeve finally.
Slay.
that's so cute. That's such a good green.
Right?
And it is a good green.
It's like a fun mixture
Mm-hmm.
because this is a brighter green and this is a darker green.
Look at
Anyways,
you.
so I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
It's cute. It's very cute.
One day I'll finish this.
I have not, as I feel like I've talked about this, haven't really worked with holding two strands together, like a strand of like wool and then a strand of mohair.
Mohair, yeah.
Mhm.
I love when people don't have like the exact perfect match for each other. It's like maybe two different colors that work well together, or two like both of those are greens but they are slightly different,
Mhm.
because I think it gives it such nice dimension. I love seeing when people do that.
Thank you.
Very cute.
Savannah, what are you working on? Oh.
Yes.
For
Pearls?
Valentine's Day?
Oh.
Yes. Hearts for
Oh.
Valentine's Day? Revolutionary.
Oh, I
That's
know.
crazy.
Getting wild over here. But very excited
Groundbreaking.
about these. I've been working on these since, I know at least since our episode with Emma. Because that's what I
No
was
way.
working on. Yeah.
Wow.
I was making very few squares. But I'm ripping up, do you guys remember these solar flares I made?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those
Yeah.
are cute.
So Well, they're no
Peace
longer.
out.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
They
I
are
mean, if you
ripped
don't wear
apart.
them, then use it for something
Yeah,
else.
exactly. I don't think
Hey,
I've worn them once since taking photos.
maybe this will give me my motivation to finish my heart alls for
Yes!
Valentine's Day.
Would love
I
it.
actually
That would
will.
be so cute. That would be so cute. You have
The
like
test
3
that
weeks.
I never finished.
That's okay. We're chilling. I would love to use any promo pictures. And I'm almost out of the off the grid sweater I made. I don't know when I made it. This time last year, maybe. But this is the last of it. The last of the white from it. So
Nice.
I guess I'm done with it now. I finished making the squares, so I don't need it for the hearts. But yeah. So I didn't even use any new yarn for this project. Isn't that cute?
Reduce, reuse,
cool?
recycle,
That's
ladies
so
and
nice.
gentlemen.
As you should.
But now I also just have like all of these left, like from the squares. I just took the purple.
But I feel like you find like a different final color and you can, I mean, it's kind of asinine to do so, but you could remake solar flares, or like you have other patterns that use the sunburst granny square. So I feel like you could just find a different yarn and because the inside colors are really cute with those.
Yeah, I really think so. And I'm gonna have like a lot of them. I'm probably gonna remove the rest of the solar flares, even though I don't need all of the purple. But isn't that fun? Isn't that something?
Nice.
Yeah.
Isn't it just?
Isn't it just? But anyway, today's episode is about the research that I've been doing for how long now? Since August or September of last year.
Yeah.
When I say doing research, it was maybe, I don't know, it was not a lot of dedicated work because I'm very busy all the time, but this contributes to my being busy all the time. So if I'm ever like, school is busy, it's because of stuff like this. But anyways, so my research, I wrote a paper last semester that was on the, so historiography is like the history of the writing in a certain academic field. So I did mine on the historiography of crochet and knitting because there is no like, I don't know. It started from like I just being in the fiber arts community. And I think you guys would agree with this. There's like a weird bias against crochet that people have. It's just like literally why like it doesn't make any sense. I think people excuse it as like they don't like the look of crochet as much as knitting, but it's got to be like it gets way too much hate for it to be just something like that. So it started as me wanting to try and find like a historical root cause to that, because I feel like it's not something that probably cropped up like, I don't know, last month. Like it's probably been around for a while. And it has, but I couldn't really find like any, like no one is exploring that. So I switched to academic articles because I was looking for academic, I was just like searching crochet and knitting. And all of the articles were like not, there was a huge literature gap as like for crochet versus knitting. There are so many more articles that just had knitting in the title. And they obviously focused a lot more on knitting than crochet. Even though, and this is my first little fun fact, there's an equal amount of knitters and crocheters in like the US at least. So like, why are we prioritizing one craft over the other? But I want to know if you guys think this is like a bigger or smaller number than you anticipated. There are 30 to 40 million knitters and crocheters. How do we feel about that?
Altogether?
Yeah, just in the US.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah?
I think that makes sense. I think it makes sense because, at least for me, sometimes I forget that like people do this as a hobby. They don't make this their whole personality. You know what I mean? Like they can like have their job and their social life and their interests, and one of their interests is knitting and crocheting.
Yeah.
And so casual.
What's the population of the States?
330 million?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about 10%.
Like that definitely makes sense. That checks out.
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot. Like I don't know a ton of people in real life who, well, yes I do. Me when I lie. Okay, whatever. Yeah, I already explained that. I'm focusing on this for my senior research project. Pretty exciting. But this semester I'm not focusing on it because I wanted to focus my second semester on finding the root of the historical bias. But unless like I want to dedicate my entire life and like write a book on it, like there's just no way to find that research in a couple months, you know?
Book
like,
number 2.
It would take book number 2 is an academic book. Can you imagine? But I also wanted to share some stats that I found. like the literature gap between knitting and crochet. So also, there's no academic journal. Love the light on you right now, Morgan.
Yeah,
So cute.
the sun is out. She heard.
No
That is
longer
a movie
foggy.
moment. Spotlight
Yeah.
on you.
Should be on Savannah.
Oh,
I know.
come on! It's
Okay,
not going to be.
Professor.
It's foggy AF.
Yeah, same
I
here.
currently have the lamp light, so I also get to be so red.
Ugh.
Yeah, I have so many lights on. I'm like, okay, orange.
Okay.
The worst lighting. Anyways.
The academic journals. So they're normally like around one topic, like it's like nature or science or like the only ones that my point here is that there are no academic journals dedicated solely to knitting or crochet, which is kind of weird when you consider that like for literally any like tiny male hobby, there is definitely an academic journal. Like there's stuff on like sports betting specifically, not just sports betting and like golf and like all of these specific things, you know? And like
And
I feel like
Fiber Arts has been around for ever.
yes. And if 10%
Literally
of the US does it,
ever.
why are we not like researching it more? Like I feel like it's a pretty important part of American
It
life
doesn't
then.
matter because it's
No.
primarily women.
Exactly.
And it's only
Who
a hobby.
cares?
It's not really art.
Yeah, what are you guys really doing over there?
Not
It
an
makes me
artist.
very mad, but whatever. But anyways, the closest academic journals are textile. It's just like it has like a subtitle, but it's like textile in all caps and textile history. So I was going through those. I was looking for articles in those because they seem pretty relevant. And in textile history, searching for knit gives you 303 returns, while crochet, can we guess how many returns crochet will give you? Let me
I
ask
feel
the
like
audience.
20.
20? That's a good guess. 2 from Morgan. It's actually 33. So 33
Anna
versus
wins.
303. So
All these
like
big
a tenth.
numbers.
I
But
know,
even
really pulling.
300 is not a lot for
Yeah,
how much history
right?
Which
knitting
is like,
has.
it's
Right?
also crazy because it, as we all know, crochet can only be done by hand. So you would think there would
Yeah.
be like more about it.
Yeah, that's why
Right.
I was trying to so my research was like finding the literature gap, like proving it's there first of all, and then
Yeah.
trying to explain it. And so I was trying to go down the route of like in like the high fashion world, like obviously you can't make crochet by like a machine. And so if I'm looking at fashion magazines and textile magazines, maybe it makes sense that they're covering knitting more because there are just more knitted textiles, and it's more in people's everyday lives. Like we say knitwear, we don't say crochet wear. Like whenever I wear something crochet, people ask if it's knit. They're never like, "Oh, is that crochet?" You know,
Yeah.
like it's just more in our vocabulary. But then a professor I was talking to about it was like, "Well, it's like a handmade thing. Wouldn't we want to cover that more?" And I was like, oh. Like more work
Yeah.
does go into it.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, okay, yeah, fair. Isn't that
Yeah.
really something? But yeah, it was the same for textile in all caps, but not to the same extreme. I think knit was 227 and crochet was 95. So we up, but not as much. Like it's still. And a lot of these, like the titles of these articles that crochet are mentioned in, it's always like crochet and knitting. Knitting can like
Mm-hmm.
stand alone. It can be like, I researched like a social knitting group, but it's never like, it could be, I researched a social knitting and crochet group. It's never crochet alone. It's never like, crochet points to XYZ. It's always knitting and crochet point to XYZ. It's like they're afraid of using that because it's not as common as of a shorthand, but like,
Yeah.
who cares? Like, get over yourself.
Did you find in reading any of the articles that were just titled about knitting that they brought up crocheting thinking that they were like the same thing? They brought it up like they were the same
Mm.
craft, or did they not even touch on crocheting at all in those articles?
A lot of articles, they didn't touch on crocheting like at all.
Mm-hmm.
They would mention knitting and crochet in the title, and then they would like have photos and they wouldn't know what they're talking about. It would be like very clearly crocheted. I think I had shared this before with you guys, the article about how mathematicians use knit and crochet to model stuff. And all of the examples were crochet. And let me repeat the quote because it makes me mad every time I read it. It said, quote, "Knitters and crocheters use mathematical principles, often without recognizing them as such, to map the pattern of a cable sweater, for instance, or to figure out how to space the stitches when adding a sleeve onto a jacket."
That's what I did.
Yeah, because
I had to do
me personally,
real math.
When I design something, I'm just
I'm
a
just
little girl, and
guessing.
I'm just happy that it works out. I actually don't know how to use numbers, and I don't know how to count, and I've never done like actual algebra in my journal to figure stuff out. I'm just a silly girl who just does a hobby.
I've never, like, for this sleeve, no, I just randomly picked up stitches. I didn't figure out, with the gauge how many stitches it would need to, how many rows it would need to be, and then how many stitches I would need to pick up, and how much space to leave in between certain stitches so that I had an even distribution of the right amount of stitches.
No.
I didn't do any
need
of
to
that,
do all
actually.
that?
That's crazy.
No.
You're a girl.
Never
just
in my
figure it out.
life.
It's literally
Everything
so
just
like
works out for
insulting.
me.
Yeah.
It
like
is
if you're going
like,
to go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead, Savannah.
Oh no. I was just gonna like if you're going to write an article, like a full academic article, a peer-reviewed article that you're publishing into the world, you think you would take 5 seconds to be like, hey, maybe knitters and crocheters do know that they're using math, Like, why didn't someone else check that for them? Like, the people that they
It's just
interviewed
so
who are knitters and
condescending.
crocheters, right? It's so
Like,
condescending.
To us, it's condescending. To other people, I feel like I would imagine they would read it in the same way. Like, my mom doesn't crochet or knit, but I feel like if she heard or read that, she would also find it to be, ruder than I'm going to assume the author intended.
Yeah.
I get it can be like if I didn't do the craft, I think I would be surprised in some ways that there's that much math that goes into it. But and maybe it's because I've always had an interest in fashion. Fashion I've always understood to be a complicated thing, like structuring garments or coming up with sizing, size grading, etc. So even before I got into it, I did have an understanding. So maybe I'm never going to be able to fully come from the perspective of someone who really has no clue, but I would like to believe that, the author had good intentions and didn't mean to sound so rude and was just trying to be like to other people who wanted to learn about crocheting and knitting, that they're like,
guys,
like, isn't this actually crazy? Like, it's I know we all just view it as a hobby, but like there's a lot more that goes into it. Maybe that's how they intended it, but it doesn't come across that way.
No.
Not at all.
I wish it did. I just wish someone in the like review process was like, this sounds kind of condescending to the people you're talking about, Like, I feel like that someone should have checked on that.
Do you know if the author was a man or a woman?
It was a woman.
The call is coming from inside the house. Girl.
Girl, let's get a grip here.
Check yourself.
It just, that one annoyed me so much. I was like on a hunt to find like things that were biased against crochet and knitting at the time, because like I found like the statistics, but like in the articles themselves it was just that they weren't talking about it. So like, how do I talk about, I can't talk about that too much, just the fact that I didn't find anything, even though it still is a glaring gap. But then I found that and I was like, perfect. But yeah, there's also, I'm talking mainly about like academic articles published in like a journal or whatever, but with books as well, it's the exact same thing. Knitting has a lot of books. It has a lot of books just on like regional history as well. Like this is on American history. There's another one called Knitting America, I think. This is called No Idle Hands, by the way, for audio viewers. I'm currently holding it in my hands. But there's also Knitting America. 0 equivalents for crochet in America. None. There are 2 like global, what are they? I don't know if I wrote down the titles. Okay, I didn't. But it's like crochet worldwide and like crochet international kind of things. But I only found them on Amazon. Like I didn't even find them that was my main source of looking. I couldn't even find them on like Google Scholar or whatever. And they're both out of print, the international crochet ones. So if you wanted to learn, no, you can't. Sorry.
Sucks.
Yeah. Like, why is there not? There should be the exact same amount. But I wonder if like publishers also like recognize this bias against crochet, and instead of like trying to correct this as we're supposed to do against biases, they're just like, not that important to correct. Like,
I wonder
whatever.
if they don't even realize it though, because here's the
Mm.
thing. If you have like a crocheter or a knitter like yourself doing the research, you can
Yeah.
recognize the differences
Yeah.
between the crafts and the, biases and the
Mm-hmm.
gaps in media. But
Mm-hmm.
if someone is just like interested in it and looking into it, but they aren't themselves a crafter,
Yeah.
which I don't think probably happens a lot,
Yeah.
figuring how much media we don't have. I have a
Yeah.
feeling these are researchers who do care
Mm-hmm.
because they do it. But with
Yeah.
that being said, like if they don't and they're just researching it,
Yeah.
it could just come down to, on their end, a lack of actual understanding
Mm.
of the differences between the two. And they don't
Yeah.
realize that, there is distinguishable differences. I
Yeah.
haven't read the book, so like I don't know, but I kind of
Yeah.
wonder if that might be part of it.
Yeah. I do think that was part of it with a lot of the authors. They just like a lot of academics, and this is like a wider conversation in the entire academic world, like if you're going to study a topic that's unfamiliar to you, like to what extent do you need to like immerse yourself in it? Like if I'm going to learn about horseback riding, there's probably a lot about horses and like horse history that I would need to know, or I can just come in and be like, horse people are weird, and they have to use like math to like scrape off the what do you call that, the horseshoes of their horses.
Yeah.
So like how much, to what extent do you need to learn, and to what extent can you just be like, I'm only doing one article on this, like can we please chill out, you know? And
Did
also it's
you
kind of, go ahead.
did you research like the history of knitting and crocheting itself, or was it just academic?
That was like part of it, was learning it. It wasn't what I was focusing on, um but it
Do you
was a
remember
little.
which came first, or if they were started around the same
Knitting
time?
did come first.
Okay.
Knitting is like there's stuff from it from like before the common era, like it's old, and then crochet is like the 18th or 19th century it started to appear.
Okay.
But by now they are equal in,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no reason, like people weren't,
No.
the academic literature did not start in the 1100s, like let's be real here. But anyways, that just makes me mad. No books, no, well, some books, some
2
articles,
books.
but yeah, 2 books, woo, that are out of print, woo. Woohoo! This is a really good book, though. I'm obviously really far through it, but it's called No Idle Hands: The Social History of American Knitting. It's written by a knitter,
That's good.
It
and
actually
it's,
sounds really interesting.
that's the one, your town was mentioned in it, Anna, because it's currently focusing on like colonial history, and
I'm
Massachusetts
gonna
was a
snatch
colony.
that book.
But yeah, it's really well written. It's also a lot of history. That one was like apparently during the American Revolution, there was like, so we stopped having like British imports, right? Because we were like boycott, like they're being mean, boycott against Morgan. But so they were like,
Morgan specifically.
yeah, it was basically like really, it became really patriotic to knit your own stuff, and so there were like, it was like knitters against like the colonizer, basically, which I find really fun, right? But it was like
Well,
seen
I
as
mean,
unpatriotic to like wear stuff that was imported. So it was like women going around and recruiting other women to knit and knitting stockings. Like Martha Washington apparently knit stockings like all the time whenever she visited Mr. George,
Okay,
on
work.
the bases. Yeah, isn't that fun?
I I mean, I feel like while it's different now, we still like see fiber arts being used in like
Mm-hmm.
activism,
Mm-hmm.
those types of spheres, using it as
Yeah.
a um way to show your beliefs. I don't know if that's like
Mm-hmm.
the wording I want to use, but
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
interesting that like there's a lot of history there with that. I mean, you
Yeah.
would
That's what.
imagine, but
Yeah.
that's cool that that's
That's
where that came
interesting.
from. That is
Yeah.
interesting.
I want to write a little blog post for my website one day about how like it annoys me so much because obviously there's still like craftivism going on, It annoys me so much when those people get comments like, keep politics out of fiber arts, like, this is literally just a hobby, like, get over yourself. No one would say the same thing about literally any other hobby. Like, if you were
Yeah.
like,
Well,
keep
fine
politics out of
arts.
drawing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Like, why would you say that?
people use their outlet, like use their hobby as an outlet all the time in
Mm-hmm.
everything. You know what I
Keep
mean?
keep politics out of your filmmaking, Christopher Nolan.
Exactly. You get it. You get it. Like, let's stop being so political all the time. Let's stop
There's
being
no
so
place in the movie
divisive.
theater.
It
3 hour ass
annoys me
movie.
so much. But yeah, that's what. Oh, yeah. I was literally, my next thing was about the origin of the term fiber arts itself.
Okay.
Because, like, so it didn't exist. It came into play around the 60s or 70s, I think, because there was a conversation happening in the art world about, like, what do we consider art, and like what is high art, and like why. That was also like second wave feminism, like Gloria Steinem type beat. So people were like, why are we like excluding women's hobbies and women's crafts from like this high art? Like, what's going on here? It wasn't just the women's hobbies part, but it was like, why is there high art and low art? Why is there this distinction? So the term fiber art was created to like try and recognize it as more of an art, and as like something that should be recognized alongside like the painting arts or the sculpture arts or whatever. But I was going to get your guys' opinions of it, because I think in a lot of the articles that I read, the term fiber arts was just used interchangeably with knitting. So do we think it's still too vague? Do you think there should be like crochet arts and knitting arts instead? Like, should we specify, or is fiber arts like good enough for us?
I like fiber
I
arts. I think
Go
it's a
ahead.
good, like, all encompassing term.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say the same thing. I feel like, because as someone who both crochets and knits,
Mm-hmm.
saying like fiber arts is easier than saying like
I knit
I'm a
and I also
crocheter and knitter.
crochet.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm a fiber
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think for me, the issue is that people don't view knitting and crocheting themselves as art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with the name fiber arts,
Mm-hmm.
if you're talking about crocheting and knitting specifically,
Yeah.
I still don't think even within our own community,
Yeah.
people recognize it as art. And I think that's kind of a different conversation that we could
Yeah.
have. I mean, I guess we kind of are having it, you know.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I think fiber arts is a good umbrella term. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that we would need to say crochet arts or knitting arts, because to
Yeah.
me, it should be automatically assumed that that's what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also wonder about like, what do embroiderers think of all of this, you know? Like, what do quilters think of this? Do they consider themselves like included in this? But I would not know. I'm not an embroiderer nor a
That's
knitter.
actually so interesting, because a conversation that at least the three of us have had off camera, I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast. We probably have. But um fiber arts, specifically in our sphere in the knitting and crocheting, because we create content some of the time that
Mm-hmm.
shares our patterns,
Yeah.
our designs. It's often, people often ask for those things all the time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like you can't just make something without someone expecting you're going to write a pattern for it and
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
them the step-by-step instructions. So I
Yeah.
wonder if embroiderers or quilters or other fiber artists aside from crocheting and knitting
Mm-hmm.
also deal with some of those same demands
Yeah.
and
I
how they feel about
wonder
them.
I wonder if people see it as less of an art because it's more technical
Mm.
Mm.
and it like can be learned, like, I guess fine arts like drawing, painting, etc. can be learned,
Yeah.
but I think it takes a lot more work to learn that kind of stuff
Yeah.
Mm.
than to learn knitting or crocheting, which
Yeah.
makes it a lot more accessible, which is good, but I feel like that's part of the reason that people don't see it as much as an art, is because people think, well, anyone can do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
That's
I look at like a Jackson Pollock painting and I'm like, fucking
yeah.
anyone can do that too.
Yeah. That's what I think that's always where people draw the line on whether something is impressive or not. I just, when my TikToks is doing well, and by doing well, I mean getting more than 5,000 views as per usual. And it was, I keep on getting comments, and I got one on YouTube as well. That was like, this is so good. I couldn't do that. No, you couldn't. Why would you assume you can if you can't crochet? Like, why is that the only reason it's impressive to you? Like, what?
Yeah.
Why is that the metric? Like, even if I could do a Jackson Pollock, I didn't. Like, he was the first to. Like,
Yeah.
if I was the
Yeah.
first to come up with the idea, but like, it's a big thing because he was, I don't know exactly with Jackson Pollock, but like,
Yeah.
I like the hard dolls are like, they do well because people haven't like seen that before. They haven't seen something similar before. Like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
revolutionary. I know that you could do it. That's why I have a pattern. But like, why is that the, it's only impressive if you couldn't do it? What?
Yeah. It's like,
Huh?
why can't you just appreciate something for being like, hypothetically, yeah, I could, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, and I'm
Yeah.
still in awe of that. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just
Like, it would,
appreciating for what it is and not like, it doesn't have to be this unattainable thing to be good.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to, people literally, they just have like Renaissance art as like the only true art, and anything that doesn't show like that level of technical skill is like, I don't know if that's that
That level of
impressive.
technical skill in their eye, though, like,
Yeah.
the amount of basic sweaters, like, I'm thinking of like a
Mm.
basic knit sweater. It's a
Yeah.
drop shoulder, or let's say it's not even a drop shoulder. Let's say it's a raglan, but you can't recognize it to be a raglan. Like,
Yeah.
the increasing, the decreasing, say it has German short
Yeah.
rows, the
Yeah.
shaping, like the calculations to make sure that it looks good, just so
Mm-hmm.
this is the perfect, like, basic sweater. It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing revolutionary. It just
Yeah.
looks it, so
Yeah.
people don't give a lot of attention to it, but it's so technically well made that it fits you perfectly. It drapes wonderfully. Like, it's just all around technically phenomenal because it doesn't look like glitzy and,
Mm-hmm.
outright, I don't know, like, showy. And I don't use showy as an insult because
Yeah.
things can be showy and be phenomenal. Things can be not showy and phenomenal. But
Yeah.
I think it's just like, it's people's own idea of what is good enough.
Mm-hmm. Like, what takes work? What would
Yes.
take them a long time?
Yeah.
Like, just respect it regardless.
Yeah.
Well,
Mm.
wild concept.
Do you think, maybe I'm jumping ahead in what you're going to say,
Mm-hmm.
but I know your beginning thoughts were about crocheting being viewed less than knitting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think crocheting, because it oftentimes is quicker because it builds up faster, do you think the time aspect has something to do with the way that we view, like, because it doesn't take as long, it can't be as good?
Yeah, that's what, again, that's like whenever I was trying to find reasons, that was part of it. Like, crochet takes up more yarn but less time, and people, I feel like, this is something that I would want to know if you guys agree with. Do you feel like people find it easier to learn crochet versus knitting,
I don't know.
or is it
I
just
don't
equal?
either.
I've had people say crochet is harder. I've had people say knitting is harder.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on, like, your motor skills and honestly what you start with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like,
Yeah.
it was confusing for me to learn how to hold two needles and, like, where do I put the yarn, because
Yeah.
I started with one hook and holding the yarn in my other hand.
Yeah, that's fair. That's what I feel like, my life would be so different if I had picked up knitting needles instead of
Yeah.
crochet first. Um, but yeah, what question did you ask? I totally got off topic there. Oh,
Oh,
crocheting is
just,
faster.
yeah. Do you think that,
Yeah,
like,
is that?
has, like, the, I guess that would be more in our own community, the
Yeah,
perception of,
I
is
feel
one better
like,
than the other?
yeah, since a lot of these articles are coming from scholars that aren't involved or like don't know what crocheting and knitting takes, that wouldn't even like occur to them. Like, it wouldn't even
Mm-hmm.
be a
A
bias in the
thought.
back of their head
Yeah.
that would like
Mm-hmm.
even inform this. Maybe for someone who is a knitter or crocheter and knows like, oh, they can just produce that crochet thing in like half the amount of time it would take me and my little tiny needles and my high class yarn with knitting. But I don't know, I hadn't really considered that. But I wish there were more articles that were written by people who know how to knit and crochet, because then like it would have been so much interesting to find their biases and like what they think, because it is also just very individual. Like, I don't know. Like, I think knitting is harder to, well, I don't know if I think knitting is harder to learn than crochet. Um, it was for me to learn, obviously. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I did crochet first. But a lot of my research at the end of the day, I had to just be like, everyone's experience with the fiber arts is very individual. And like, I don't know, like, I can't really say anything, which is kind of sad. But that's okay. If I ever made it into a longer project, hopefully I would have things to say. But I did want to tell you guys about there's a like a textile like kind of fashion collection, like a preservation collection on campus at Indiana University. It's called the Sage
Cool.
Collection, and I went there just to see like what they had on knitting versus crochet. Um, and so the curator of the collection just pulled like a bunch of knitting and crochet pieces for me. And the most interesting part of that to me, it was all this very cool stuff, lots of crochet from like the 1800s. And it was very cool to see like they're literally like doing granny stitches like us, like back then. Like we're all connected, truly.
Besties. We're all just
But
girls in the
they,
world.
besties. Exactly, exactly. But one of the crochet pieces that the curator pulled for me to look at, like it's in the system as crochet, it's physically labeled as crochet, was actually knit, and it was just mislabeled. And I was like, oh,
I
Did you
thought you were
tell
gonna
her?
be like, I thought you were gonna be like some. I thought you were gonna be like something that she pulled.
mm-hmm.
It was the solar flares.
Can you imagine? It was my work. They wanted to
But it was
preserve
from like
me.
years ago. Like someone else did
Yeah,
it first.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Can
Anyways,
you
they
imagine?
mislabeled
No,
it.
I did tell her. I was like, hey, I don't know if you
Aw.
know, because she wasn't a knitter or crocheter herself. So, but I feel like if you learn, like, if you're in fashion school, this was something that wasn't in my outline, but I can divulge. In like high fashion, kind of like in my fashion design, I'm doing a fashion design minor here. But if I was doing a major, someone was telling me that you like learn how to knit at some point, because you need to learn like the base processes of like how textiles are made, and knitting is kind of a big part of that. I don't think you learn how to weave, but I guess knitting is easier to learn how to do than weaving. um, but yeah, so you would learn how to knit but not crochet, because why would you use crochet in these like high art collections? So I didn't know if she would be able to recognize like the difference. She was incredibly smart, like she's been in the field for decades. Like this was a bias that I had, because I was like, I don't know if you were taught this in school, but she very much was. I didn't ask her that at all. I was just like, I think this is knitting, and she was like, yeah, that definitely is. We have to go back into the system and relabel it. And it was labeled from like the 80s as well, 80s or 90s. So clearly they also didn't pull this very often for people to look
Yeah.
at. This was like never even on display or things like that. So I was like, so interesting. A lot of implications there. But it was a very cool like moment for me to be like, hey, I think what's in this collection, it's mislabeled. You guys need to fix that. And they did. And now it's in the
You
system differently.
mansplaining to someone who literally has a career in this.
Yeah, is literally the director of the
Um,
collection.
I think I know
She
more
was
about
like,
American Girls
wow,
than
never
you do,
noticed that.
genius.
Exactly. You guys get it. But no, a lot, the pieces she pulled were so cool. And we were both like, there was a lot of stuff with like ribbon, like knitting and ribbon
Ah,
and crochet and ribbon from like the
gorgeous.
80s. And she was like, yeah, this used to be big. And I was like, I've literally
It's good.
never
It's
seen
big
this before in
now.
my life. Well, like crocheting and knitting with the
With
ribbon.
ribbon.
Oh,
You know
that's
what I
actually so
mean?
interesting.
Yeah. Like
That's so
not just
sick.
like bows in the hair. I was like, how did you guys do this? Like
That
that's
is
not
so
my
cool,
preferred
actually.
kind of yarn, right? It
I've
was
seen
like
it.
it was
I've
also
seen it.
like wearable
People do it
pieces.
with like bags. I've seen that.
With what?
Bags, purses.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
like stuff like that I
I've seen
understand, but if
people
you're going to
crochet
wear that,
ribbon with it like for a bag, but
yeah,
not for like a
I've
top.
like heard of it before, but it was like big back in the day. Back in the day being the 80s, so not that long ago.
It's back
Um,
in the day.
but yeah, I haven't shared this quote with you guys before, but there was kind of half a connection with the not disrespect of knitting versus crochet, but like second wave feminism, 60s, 70s. Women were like, we are more than housewives. We can get outside of the home and do men's jobs in the exact same way they can. So it was kind of like, put down your knitting needles, like, we can do better than that. And then it was like basically a reverse of that in third wave feminism, which is kind of right now-ish. People are still kind of debating that, where it was like, take it back up. Like, we're going to reclaim this like thing that has been like our thing for centuries, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's stupid that we were ever like, you have to stop knitting to be taken seriously.
Yeah, it has to be one or the other. It's like,
Yeah.
I can be like outrageously smart and good at a job, but I can also
Yeah.
go home and knit if I want to.
Yeah. And like,
Doesn't
that
have to be one or
shouldn't
the other.
have anyone take you less seriously because you can still
Yeah.
like do a woman's hobby. Like, let's be real here. But there was this article that was talking about like, a section of it was talking about like how knitting can build community among women. And it said knitting in particular, unlike crafts such as crochet or embroidery, serves as a common link between what may otherwise be disparate groups. And they were talking about like knitting groups. And I was like, what? Huh? Like, what do you mean? Like, look at us. Like, we all crocheted originally, and we were disparate groups. We live in 3 different areas of the world being the US and Canada. But like,
No.
what are you like talking about? Like, the craft night I go to, people aren't like, if you're not knitting, you
Crazy.
can't come. Like,
Fuck out of
literally,
here.
what are you guys talking about? I don't know if
That's
the author was like a knitter or crocheter, but like,
That's
do you guys have
interesting.
any thoughts on why knitting would have been seen as like more community building? Because she didn't provide any explanation.
I
This is just
don't
stated as
know.
fact,
Maybe
right?
there were more knitters back then.
Maybe.
Maybe they were at war. I have no idea.
I feel
That's
like
so
it's
weird.
I feel like it's probably because they were more knitters than crocheters.
Yeah,
But
That's the only
I'm
reason I can
like
think of.
but she's talking about modern times now. Like,
right now.
yeah,
Oh, I
this
thought you were
isn't
talking
even the
about like the
history of it.
80s.
Oh no,
Yeah,
no.
same. I thought
Oh, right now?
no.
Yeah, this was from like the 2000s or 2010s. This
Oh,
article.
maybe she's just a hater, actually.
She just
Sometimes
hates the
academics are just
girls.
haters.
Yeah. I feel like some people do probably have subconscious biases. They wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
actually say like they think they're better for doing one over the other. But I think,
Yeah,
like many things, if you've been conditioned, you know,
yeah,
if the world is viewed knitting as better than crochet or given that more attention, used to
yeah,
the name more often, maybe you do feel like that's better, but I don't actually think that's the case.
yeah.
Um, there was a second point I was going to make. That's gone
That's
now.
so fair. We can return to it. Knitting groups are just such a like. I feel like they would be so interesting to study, like those individual things, because it was also I didn't include this in my final paper, but it was kind of a trend like in like 2000. You guys have heard of like the stitch and bitch groups, right? Or like the
Yeah.
thing, yeah, it was like an early 2000s like thing, like we're women and we bitch while we stitch, like we're getting kind of wild out here, like don't consider us this old grandma thing. And people
Should
were
we
like,
rename the
whoa.
podcast?
Yes, we should.
That's literally us.
But it was like some articles were written on that, on like these women are reclaiming the craft as feminist and like not associated with old women anymore. And then I found some articles from the 80s that were like, these women are pushing back against feminists telling them to put down their needles and they're reclaiming the craft. And then like when people like we're associated with like in like right now, people have like news segments have come and be like, these women are reclaiming the craft of knitting and crocheting for themselves. And it's like, how many times do we need to reclaim it? When can we not? It's just not like widely recognized by society that like in the
Yeah.
same way that like, I don't know. I don't know what else is
I think
reclaimed, but like,
it's very similar to like the recent, it has nothing to do with knitting or crocheting, is
mm-hmm.
how everyone's like, no one wants to work anymore. Kids don't want to work anymore. And this is such a new thing. And then there's like
Mm-hmm.
news articles from every single decade to like the
Mm-hmm.
1910s that are like,
Yeah.
kids don't want to work anymore.
Yeah.
The new generation doesn't want to work. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
nothing's new.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can we be
Well,
so for real here?
what I was going to say is that's so interesting that back in the 80s, that there were a group of people who were doing fiber arts one way,
Mm-hmm.
being let's put down the needles, and prove that like we are just as capable of doing these quote unquote man's jobs as they are, versus the, I'm going to assume, older female population who was like, I'm not putting my knitting needles down, like I'm not doing that, I'm not gonna like subscribe to that. So you had these two sides sort of butting heads, where at the root of it I think that they would agree, you know. Maybe that's a bit of a more, that's a bit different than what I was gonna say is happening now, where there are, I feel like many of us have seen this, there are many people in an older generation who crochet and knit, who love diving into what's happening in the now, who love encouraging younger people to pick up the art so it doesn't die. But I think that there still is a lot of people in the older generation who don't like the things happening now. Whereas they were probably the ones 30 years ago, 40 years ago, new to picking up the craft, getting ridiculed for doing the new stuff by then's older generation. I find it so interesting that these similar themes keep happening throughout history, yet there's nothing being learned from them. Like, why is the younger generation keeping this younger generation who grows older, when they were ridiculed, why didn't they want to change it for the newer generations coming after them? I do think there has been some change. Like I said, there are probably so many people in an older generation of fiber artists who are obsessed with, you know, the amount of people picking it up now and the trends happening, and they probably appreciate it and love it. But there's, you know, granted, there's always going to be haters, but I don't, I just find it weird that it keeps happening.
It might have something to do with like being possessive of it.
That's a good point.
Like, being a fan of something that's like, I'm a fan of this, whatever. There's a small fandom, people, you get made fun of. It's so nerdy. And then when it's getting widely accepted, you're like, no, that's mine. You all made fun of me for this.
That's fair. Like, you,
it's kind of annoying that now all these people are so cool for liking this thing.
And they're cool because they're young. So I would totally understand the resentment.
So I think that might be part of it.
That probably is. You're definitely right. I just find it so interesting that there were, obviously, in the ways of that time, being the wave of feminism that was happening, which is, I guess, slightly different than now, which, like you were saying, there's this questionable third wave feminism that's being debated. So in some ways it's the same, some ways it's different. But that probably is the case where it's like crocheting and knitting, a lot of people in the community recognize that it will never actually be out of style. You know what I mean? But when it's, right now it's trendy. It's trendy to learn how to do it. And maybe it's trendy, it's seemingly trendy, but it's actually going to last for a lot of people. Maybe this actually will be like a lifelong hobby for some people. But because there's a lot of talk about it, like, you know, a lot more people do it than they did at the beginning of the pandemic. I don't know. I just feel like it's so interesting seeing then versus now, and how it's like there are a lot of similarities that are still happening.
Totally agree. I had two things to say. Oh yeah, to the like, older women can sometimes resent, like, obviously I think I would totally be resentful too, that like these people are getting attention for the sole fact that they are young and just picked it up. Like, let's be real here. Point. That reminded me of for the flower alls pattern on Ravelry, one of the first comments I got on there, and it's still like one of the few comments that's on the pattern, was like, and I still can't exactly figure it out, but it was this group on Ravelry, which is terrible to navigate, by the way, so I like couldn't figure out in which particular way they were insulting me. But they just posted the flower alls to their group and was like, guys, have you seen like this popular pattern that's going around right now? Like, it looks so uncomfortable and it's so ugly. And I was like, I'm literally 18 years old. Like, and I like went through the entire history of the group, and they did that so often with people's patterns, and people would come on and be like, hey, like, this is literally like, you guys don't have to do this at all. Like, can we just stop being mean? You're aware this is public, right? And this is on the history of my pattern now. And they would like take those people off of their group and be like, we literally are just having fun. Like, stop like coming onto our private space. And it's like,
our private space on this public domain.
Yeah. Like,
That's
it was
crazy.
just so, that was
Publicly
literally like one of the
ridiculing
first
other
things
people's
that
work.
happened
Oh
whenever.
my god.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
babe, I don't have a gun to your head. You don't need to make it.
Don't buy the
Exactly.
pattern if
That
you
makes
do
me
not
so
like it.
mad. Yeah. Oh, what's that one guy who does like, do you know the guy I'm talking about who does like mesh tank tops? James or something? His name maybe
Yeah, I know who
starts
you're
with a
talking
J.
about.
Yes, yeah. So many of his patterns. They were like, can you believe him? Why is this so popular? And it's like, not
Because
everyone
it
is like
slays.
you. Yeah, it slays. Like, I just get with the times and
Oh
get
my
over it.
god.
It's so, like, I can understand the resent to an extent, but this is public. I can see that. I was 18 years old being like, okay, sorry guys, didn't mean to like do all this, but like, it's not that
Like,
serious.
heaven forbid you enjoy the same hobby that they have been. Because here's my confusion with the whole older demographic versus younger demographic. I feel like there are a certain population of people within the older generation of crocheting and knitting that would almost ridicule the younger generation for
Mm-hmm.
not getting into it, saying that this
Yeah.
is a dying art and, like, people should care about it, and then people start to care about it and then they're upset about it, probably because
Yeah.
they wanted people to care about them, sort of thing. I
Yeah.
don't know. And maybe at this point I'm just making an assumption. I really don't have like basis to this, right? But
Yeah.
um it's so interesting because I would wonder if some of those people would have the attitude of like, people need to care more about this, otherwise this
Mm-hmm.
art is going to die.
Yeah.
And then people care about it in the way that's relevant to them, in a way
Yeah.
that's going to make sense and fit them and their personality and their life and
Yeah.
the world in which they're growing up in, and then they don't like it because it doesn't fit their exact agenda of it.
Yeah. That's totally very
I
much a
wonder
possibility.
if I wonder if that is going back to, I guess, what we started with.
Yeah.
I wonder if that is why maybe those people view knitting as better than crocheting,
Mm.
because I'm thinking of wearables
Yeah.
specifically,
Yeah.
because crochet has such a distinct look already. Anything on
Yeah.
top of that is going to be even more of a statement. Like,
Yeah.
we've talked about this. It's hard to wear crochet pieces that are interesting, like say the solar flares. You can wear
Yeah.
them in the day to day, absolutely.
Yeah.
You should, but
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of people would necessarily want to.
Yeah.
So I wonder if for those people who crochet things like blankets or household accessories, or maybe um, clothing like shawls or whatever, that don't have a lot of color work or
Mm-hmm.
intricate detailing, or they do
Mm-hmm.
knitting, which in my opinion historically has been more subdued. I think all of it has been more subdued
Yeah.
historically.
Yeah.
They see specifically crocheters now doing the big, huge, elaborate things with the clothing or the plushies or whatever. And
Yeah.
because it's not what they're used to doing, they view it as less than.
Yeah.
I
That
That
could
is
wonder.
also,
that's entirely
yeah.
a theory, but
I wonder if people, if like the general consensus is that knitting, quote unquote, looks better, is because it can be
Yeah.
automated, so we see more of it,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good
Mm-hmm.
point.
Yeah.
and that's
That's
Yeah, we're
completely
more
true.
just
that's just
used to
it.
it.
Yeah. I also
Exactly.
wonder if, like, especially with the recent rise of like crochet in fast fashion that's like not really crochet, or if it is, it like looks terrible. If that's people's like only exposure to crochet in real life, like if they don't have anyone in their life that actually crochets, of course they're gonna think it looks bad. It does look bad. Like, I can't blame them for being like crochet looks worse if it's this like weird like cider-esque imitation of crochet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's totally fair. I don't think that's the
And
exact like thing that these articles are talking about, but
And half the time, on that same point, the crochet that we see in fast fashion is just knitting that's made to imitate crochet.
yeah.
So then it adds to the general population's confusion more of like, what is crocheting versus knitting.
Yeah. Very fair. Okay, one last thing to tell you
Okay.
guys, because I think this is very interesting. I think Morgan, maybe you will have something to say, especially on this.
Oh boy.
But the bias against crochet historically might come from English people's hatred of the Irish. Fun fact.
I believe it.
Okay, so that's today's episode of the Crochet Authority. But basically, like the beginning of crochet, a lot of like the first records of it are from Irish crochet lace, like during the famine in the 1800s.
Yeah.
That became one of their main exports, because like bobbin lace takes a lot longer than crochet lace. So the Irish people exported a lot of lace, and became associated with them. Crochet became associated with them, and a lot of like high class English people like refused to buy it because they don't like Irish people. Like they would still buy like French bobbin lace instead. That was 10 times the price, looks basically the exact same. Like no one's gonna come up to your dress and be like, is that crochet instead? Because these people are crocheting with like size one, like the tiniest needles. Like this is
It's
not
lace.
like it's lace, it's actual lace. So no one is going to be able to tell the difference. But English people hated the Irish so much they were like, let's not do this. But then Queen Victoria, in the 1860s or something, I don't know, mid to late 19th century, she crocheted some scarves for her soldiers, and so the English people were like, do we have to like crochet? Like, is this like a requirement? So some of them started to buy Irish crochet lace, but it's still associated with them primarily, like English knitting, Irish crochet. Like you have like Fair Isle that comes from Scotland, and like all these techniques that are on, well, Scotland is obviously different than England, but the separation of the isles. But yeah, what do you think of that, Morgan?
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like
The
a exact, people write about it, but they aren't like,
I
and this is
understand
why
the
people
theory
dislike
behind it. It makes
crochet.
sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that's
I
like
mean, I
the root of
literally
this
don't
is
know
the
anything
English
about
hating the Irish. It's like,
history
yeah.
or
The
this
history of
feud.
like England and, oh, okay, cheers. Cheers.
I just live here.
That's so fair. You're just
Sure.
chilling in London.
But
But yeah,
British people are very like strong-willed.
yes, this is
And
true.
like if they're going to be a hater, they're going to be a hater.
You can't stop the haterisms.
No. And you know what? That's why I fit in here.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
That's really interesting actually.
Isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
like this is like part of my
It's
own
not
research,
proven.
being
Yeah, it's
like
just
trying to
theorized.
find a connection between those two. But I feel
Just
like
go
that
up to
connection
people on the
would.
street.
Yeah.
Do you hate Irish people, and is that why you think knitting is better than crocheting?
And they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what?" There's no connection between those two. But yeah, there
Interesting.
possibly could be. If I was gonna do more research, I would probably have to go into like the British archives. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's really viable for me to fly over there to do that. But hey, I could visit Morgan along the way. Hey.
Interesting.
But yeah, that isn't all of the research. Obviously, there's a lot more small things, but those are the most interesting parts, I think. We covered a lot. Did you guys learn something today?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yay!
Did you, the
This
audience,
was
learn
fun.
something today?
It's like Dora. We turned the podcast
I was
into
gonna say.
Dora. I saw
This
some
was
tweet that was like,
fun.
whenever my boyfriend listens to podcasts, like he talks like he's in the room.
I hope people talk with us
Yes. Please follow
as
along
they
and comment every
should.
single
Guys, you're in the
timestamp of
group
what you
chat.
say. Guys!
Yeah, live comment.
Yes,
Please,
Please.
yes.
please. No, thank you, Savannah. That's great.
This is so
Proud
great.
staff.
Yeah,
And
I'm glad you guys
to the
liked it.
viewers, if you guys like this kind of format where we do research and we discuss, let us know. Obviously, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's a less gossipy like format of an episode, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
this and our gossipy is so fun, like a little mix of the
Yeah.
two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know,
and like we still get to share our own stories and be like, yeah, this comes from that, you know?
true.
Yeah. To
This
wrap
was
it
fun.
up though, what are you guys using your yarn during? What are you guys watching, listening to, etc.?
Percy Jackson.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Season. Episode 7 just came out.
Ooh, they're far
Yes.
along.
One more, and then we're done.
Only 8 for the first one?
Girl, yeah, that's how
I've
TV
only
works
seen...
these days.
I'm sorry.
8 episode seasons. Listen, I could go on about this. I am a 13 episode season stan for life. There was a very short period where we were doing 13 episodes, and it was perfect. Bring back 13 episode seasons. Enough of this 8, sometimes 6.
Yeah.
Unless it is a silly little show such as like Abbott Elementary, which is one of my shows currently.
Yeah,
20.
20.
20 to 22.
Yeah.
Nothing less. No teens.
Yeah.
I need the content. I need it bad.
Yeah. No, I'm talking like,
Real.
yeah, sitcoms I can do with like many, many episodes. I can do like 20, 22.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The drama, 13. It's too short. 8 is too
It is.
short.
It is.
Yeah, it's not a
Anyways,
lot.
and I'm also still on season 2 of Good Omens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's
Slay.
it.
Love.
Nice.
Anna?
Well, my parents and I are finally finishing season 2 of Abbott Elementary because the new season starts at the beginning of February.
Yep.
Ooh.
7th, I think.
What'd you say?
I think the 7th.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's an hour premiere, which is thrilling. I love that show, so I'm very excited. And then I started watching Sex Education,
Yes.
which I think is funny. It's definitely not my favorite show. I can't like sit and binge it, but I'll watch like an episode or two and then I'll like move on to something else.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny. And then in terms of reading, I've been inspired to read because I prefer reading to looking at my phone because looking at my phone makes me feel terrible. But I have not had any books that have really like captured my heart. I did just finish reading a novella called Woman that it was out of print for a while and now it's coming back into print. I use this platform called NetGalley, if you guys have ever heard of it, where you can get like advanced reader copies of books in exchange for reviews.
Yeah.
And so I read it through that because I think it's coming back out into print with a new foreword from a fellow author. And it was a very interesting story. It was a very quick read, very good, but very sad. Touches on a lot of like the feelings of like the queer experience. And apparently there's some like history with it where because it's never been like a very huge book, but it's been known within the community. There were obviously not a lot of copies. You would buy a copy for your partner, or you would only be able to get your hands on a copy of this novella by dating another woman who had it, and she would give it to you.
Yeah. That's so interesting.
Interesting.
And I don't remember if I only know the history from the author who was writing the foreword as well as the author's notes at the end. So I only know like part of it. So I don't know if it was like, I don't know if it's like sweater curse vibes or if it's like just that's just the way it was passed around. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just the way it was,
it's just,
gotten to people. But I thought that was so interesting that like,
very interesting.
Because it's like I look to buy it because I'm like, wow, this is so good. I want to get it. But it's obviously, if it's going to be, I'm assuming it's going to be back into print because it was an advanced reader copy was given out. But I looked to get it from when it was originally printed. And it's like $114 on Amazon because it's out of print.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there are only a few copies.
Wow.
So very, very interesting that it's like you would get it by passing it around.
Yeah. That is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what I've been up to. I have not been watching movies recently.
Yeah. That's
Savannah?
beautiful. I also haven't been reading as much as I want to. I'm currently in the midst of Jenny Slate's memoir, which I think is so annoying and not good at all. It's definitely her, but it's just very millennial. And like, I don't know what I expected. Like, it's Jenny Slate. Love Marcel Lachelle, but this book is getting probably a 3 max, a 2 if she continues like this, and she definitely will. So that, and I watched The Conversation last night, 2 nights ago, I don't know. Going to see the Royal Tenenbaums tonight. Wes Anderson, very
Good
excited. Seeing it on the big screen, very excited. William Shatner is coming to IU's campus, by the way.
Love.
Literally, because like the eclipse is happening in April, and
Oh my
Bloomington
God.
is like, what?
I saw an article yesterday. This is nothing. It was just with the eclipse. And it was like 4 school boards in Ontario are changing the PA days for the eclipse or because of the eclipse. And I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? So I read the article and they're like, the eclipse, when is it? It's in like May? April. And they're like, the PA day was planned for like May or June or whatever, but they're like, the eclipse is supposed to happen around the time that the kids are let out of school. And there's a big risk from looking at it.
Yeah.
So they're like, we're just going to have a PA day on that day so that they're not outside when the eclipse
Yeah.
happens so that they don't look at it. I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
interesting. Anyways,
Sure.
William Shatner.
Oh yeah, William Shatner. It's already sold out, so can't go
Oh.
see him. He's 93. Why would you want to come to Bloomington, Indiana when you're 93 years old? They gotta be
Go
paying
rest,
him.
King.
Yeah.
Go learn how to knit.
Yeah, come on. We also do have school off that day for the eclipse. And it's on one of the 2 days a week. I do have school, so I'm just gonna
so you actually
only have
benefit
class
from
one
it?
day. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, nice.
But some of my friends have that day off already, so it's like,
That's so
Ew.
annoying.
isn't
There have
it?
been 2
But-
times that the cafe I work at had to close for like snow or whatever maintenance.
Yeah.
Both days wasn't scheduled. How is this
Can
beneficial
I please
to me?
benefit from the? Yeah. Like, can the weather go around my schedule?
My schedule. Hello.
Yeah, annoying. But I'm watching The Bear as well for the first time.
Yes.
Very
I need
good.
to finish that.
I feel like it would stress you out a lot, Anna.
I've watched part of it.
Yeah? Did it stress you out?
Some episodes did, but I think that was kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the episodes that stressed me out were probably the ones that they were like trying to elicit that feeling.
Yeah.
I like the characters a lot though. It was just on Hulu, and I don't have Hulu anymore because
cheers.
I didn't want to keep paying for the Spotify plan. I just switched onto my parents' account, and I didn't get Hulu anymore. Not that you guys care, but I just don't have it to watch it.
So fair. But yeah, I forgot that my student stuff is going to end soon as well. I got a email from Amazon that was like, your student prime, sorry. I was like, oh.
They're also like, you have to pay more for Prime Video if you want to watch it with no commercials.
Really?
Why do you need my money, Jeffrey?
Yeah, you have enough.
Are you kidding?
For
the
sure.
The streaming model will hopefully die within the next few years.
It has to.
cable.
Streaming is dying.
Yeah.
We still have cable, and it's like
They're
good.
fucking it up.
Yeah.
Like,
I would
my mom
cable.
and I watch RuPaul's Drag Race on Friday nights.
Yeah.
On like with cable. The commercial happens. I get up and I use the bathroom.
Yeah.
I go get a snack. Like,
I love
it's
that.
so much better.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Just tune in and out. It's gorgeous. Yeah, I don't think that's all I'm doing. I'm gonna finish this book one day. I would love to finish it because I've learned so much from the 41 pages I've read already.
I did. I marked it as want to read on Goodreads.
Okay,
I'm
we're
reading
getting somewhere.
I finished the first Percy Jackson book. I'm reading the second one now.
My roommate's also reading the books because of the series.
Yeah.
Great for Rick Riordan's wallet.
It's from the library, so...
Oh, probably still great. They can buy more copies. Okay, cheers. Good episode.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Woo! Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Crochet Authority. If you liked it, which we know you did, make sure to rate it 5 stars and give us the best review possible wherever you can. Also, make sure to stay up to date with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Crochet Authority. Also follow our personal accounts on social media because we are perfect. Bye!
Bye!